2047, as the President of the United States, I will bring peace to the Middle East because I love both Israel and Palestine. Israel versus Palestine. And I know, just by saying that sentence, I'm probably losing followers on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all those other social medias. That's how controversial this topic is. People are going to say, "You friggin' idiot, shut the hell up," before I even start talking about this. But we need to talk about this, guys. It's the biggest crisis in our own lifetime. Forget the Rohingya crisis. Forget the Jammu and Kashmir crisis. This is the biggest crisis in our lifetime. And it's also the longest. It's been running for 73 years since the creation of Israel. And now the tension is escalating. People are firing rockets at each other, and tens of thousands are dying, and hundreds more are in homes and shelters, just waiting for the chaos to stop. Now, let's look at what spiked this conflict once again. On May 6th, 2021, only a few days ago, Palestinian protesters went into Jerusalem and started protesting over the Israeli Supreme Court decision to evict 4 Palestinian families. This protest soon escalated into brawls and violence between Jewish protesters and Palestinian protesters. In response to this conflict, the Palestinians, specifically 2 militant groups, Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, specifically the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, if you didn't catch on to that already, those 2 launched hundreds of missiles into Israel. The thing is, Israel's defense forces were able to deflect most of them, and the rest mostly just went short. Now, in response to that, the Israeli defense forces launched a huge airstrike into Palestine. Now, let's see what's happened. As of this recording, 122 people have died on the Palestinian side, including about 30 children, while 7 have died on the Israeli side, including 1 child. Now, this can't go too in-depth into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Whatever you say, no matter how much in-depth we go, people are always going to say, "I'm leaving out this crucial piece of context or that piece of history." And, they're probably right, because there's no way a 20-minute video can cover 73 years of beef. First of all, there's the history of how Israel became a state, with the British Mandate of Palestine gaining independence, and then the Jewish rising up. And there's the story of how the UN created the West Bank territories for Palestine. And there's this and that, and all of that crap. And now, there's not really a way I can get into it without leaving something out. But let's just look at the basic pieces of history and piece them all together to see what this conflict is about. The Mandate of Palestine gained independence in 1948. But after the explosion of anti-Semitism brought on by Nazi Germany, the Jews wanted their own state. And so they got their own state. And that state was called Israel. But, the Arabs needed to go, somewhere, right? So, the United Nations, which had just been formed after World War II, partitioned Israel and gave a tiny bit of chunk, shaped like an awkwardly shaped backwards B, to Palestine, along with the Gaza Strip. Well, how did this happen? How did Israel capture these territories? Well, at first, Palestine was basically just independent. It was fully recognized by everybody. But Israel really pushed in Israel went beyond the UN specifics for the West Bank and the Jewish state. And they only left a tiny bit of the original UN suggestion for Palestine. Then Jordan owned the West Bank, but Israel took it back. Now I have to end the history here. Why? Well, because this is such a long conflict. It started before I was born in 2012. It started before my father was born in 1979. Hell, it even started before my grandfather was born in 1950. So that's how long this topic is. By the time I finish it, this part of the speech won't even be relevant to what we're going to be talking about back then. So, I'm going to end the speech here and say that it's just too long. Have to go back and back and back and back all the way until you probably see the first microorganisms digesting each other and probably evolving into the first cells of the Israeli and Palestinian. Now, I want to give a message to the Palestinians. The Israelis have so much more power, and they've been offering you this and that. They've been offering you more homes to come back to your bank accounts, to get out of the refugee camps and get back into your homes. Just for the recognition of their poor Jewish state. And yet you decline. They have so much power. If they choose to invade you, nobody else in the region will help you. And what is that tiny Jordan going to do? It had no chance against the giant Israeli defense force. Saudi Arabia isn't going to help you. Yemen isn't going to help you. Kuwait isn't going to help you. Bahrain isn't going to help you. Egypt isn't going to help you either. And Turkey's way too far away. Nobody's going to help you if you get invaded. They all have their own agenda. Now, to the Palestinians, I can only give you one more piece of advice. Nearly all of the countries in your region, the Middle East, their agendas, their desires, they are self-serving. Not selfless, they are selfish. And to the Israelis, you have so much power. And with great power comes great responsibility, as a great man once said. So, you are responsible for anything that goes wrong. And you have a choice. If the Palestinians throw rocks, throw love, Israel.